Chapter 23. Are schools really prisons? Some people at this time in history even go as far as to say that schools are prisons because they last for so many years and you can be given less time by a judge, dependent on your crime. If you are sent to a prison, children are generally required by law to go to school between the ages of 6 and 16. They are told what to do and when they can leave at the end of the day. They have virtually no voice and need to follow the rules, so to a degree, yes, they could be compared to prisons. Other types of prisons could be jobs or marriages for some. This could be an ongoing healthy debate and I do not want to spend too much time on it, but the similarities between schools and prisons I think are definitely there. What I do believe is that many teachers are very aware of the limitations of the public school system and the detrimental effects of forced education. Somebody that I spoke to 3 weeks ago told me that they knew plenty of teachers that were trying to escape and get out of the UK's education system because it is not what they signed up for and are not happy teaching. The system works against many of them even though they try to instill freedom and play, muting the senses of failure that kids have and reducing anxiety and trying to allow free thinking, cooperation and compassion for others. The quality of education given to the lower class must be of the poorest sort, so that the mode of ignorance isolating the inferior class from the superior classes and remains incomprehensible to the inferior class. With such an initial handicap, even bright lower class individuals have little if any hope of extricating themselves from their assigned lot in life. This form of slavery is essential to maintain some measure of social order, peace and tranquility for the ruling upper classes. This is a quote by H.L. Mencken in October 2015. Humanitarianfree.com wrote an article entitled "America's Public Schools Are Prisons, Militarized, Intolerant, Senseless, Over-criminalized, Legalistic, Surveillance-riddled and Totalitarian." It could be difficult to disagree with this title as the facts speak for themselves in this article. For example, a Spring Valley High School student took her cell phone out in maths class and according to her classmate, Tony Robinson Jr., it was only for a quick second. That made little difference to the teacher, who, adhering to the zero-tolerance school policy which is common now in American schools, demanded that she surrender her phone. The student refused, so the teacher called in a school administrator and the student would still not obey. The cops were called and the school's resource officer, Sheriff's Deputy Ben Fields, was summoned to coerce compliance from the student. Fields had a desk moved and transferred a laptop from the girl's desk to another desk. This was caught on camera. Fields asked her again, "Will you move? Will you move?" To which the student replied, "No, I have not done anything wrong." Fields told her that he was going to treat her fairly, to which she replied that "I don't even know you." Officer Fields then wrapped an arm around the girl's neck, placed his other hand under her thigh, and violently flipped her backwards onto the floor along with her combination desk chair. By her wrists and thigh, he then dragged her and the entangled desk chair along the floor, yanked her out of it and flung her to the front of the classroom, where he mounted and cuffed her. Another classmate by the name of Nia Kenny, who also recorded the assault, was arrested as well for vocally protesting. Back in 2005, the Daily News reported on another of his assaults. Martin said the beefy officer snapped after he called him dude and slammed him on the ground. He began pepper spraying the helpless veteran, but Martin said he was trained in the military to resist the chemicals. An entire canister of the stuff failed to disable Martin. He became even more violent because I didn't react like most people would, Martin told the news. Martin's wife at the time, Tashiana Rogers, witnessed the fracas and ran outside to take photos of the encounter with her cell phone. Fields then called for backup for his partner to get her black ass before the officer grabbed her phone and deleted the pictures. The officer told Martin as he was cuffed that "You're just another notch in my belt." According to court documents, Fields was recently fired over the Spring Valley incident, but John W. Whitehead of the Rutherford Institute believes that unleashing rabid cops like Fields upon kids is just one aspect of the evolution of American schools turning into high-security prisons. In his essay entitled "Public School Students Are the New Inmates in the American Police State," he quotes investigative journalist Annette Fuentes, who reports that every day in communities across the U.S., children and adolescents spend a majority of their waking hours in schools that have increasingly come to resemble places of detention more than places of learning. From metal detectors to drug tests, from increased policing to all-seeing electronic surveillance, the public schools of the 21st century reflect a society that has become fixated on crime, security and violence. Whitehead goes on to state that America's public schools contain almost every aspect of the militarized, intolerant, senseless, over-criminalized, legalistic, surveillance-riddled, totalitarian landscape that plagues those of us on the outside. They have become a microcosm of the American police state, right down to the host of surveillance technologies, including video cameras, finger and palm scanners, iris scanners, as well as RFID and GPS tracking devices, employed to keep constant watch over their student bodies. Whitehead continues and says that police are more and more stepping in to deal with minor rule-breaking, sagging pants, disrespectful comments and brief physical skirmishes. What previously might have resulted in a detention or a visit to the principal's office was replaced with pain, temporary blindness, often followed by a trip to the courthouse. Thanks to a combination of media hype, political pandering and financial incentives, the use of armed police officers to patrol school hallways has risen dramatically in the years since the Columbine school shooting, nearly 20,000 by 2003. Funded by the U.S. Department of Justice, school resource officers, SROs, have become de facto wardens in elementary, middle and high schools, dishing out their own brand of force to the so-called criminals. The horror stories are legion. One SRO is accused of punching a 13-year-old student in the face for cutting the cafeteria line. That same cop put another student in the chokehold only 1 week later, allegedly knocking the student unconscious and causing a brain injury. In Pennsylvania, a student was tasered after ignoring an order to put his cell phone away. Whitehead says that the government is contracting with private prisons to lock up the young for behavior that once would have merited a lecture, and that 40% of those young people who are arrested serve time in a private prison in order to make profit. This profit-driven system has also given rise to growth in juvenile prisons and financial incentives for jailing young people. For instance, 2 Pennsylvania judges made headlines when it was revealed that they had been conspiring with 2 businessmen in a $2.60 million kids for cash scandal that resulted in more than 2,500 kids being found guilty and then jailed in for-profit private prisons. In the United States alone, 10,000 kids are held in jails each day, while 500,000 are kept locked up around the world. Psychologist Peter Gray asked what distinguishes a school from a prison, and answers his own question by saying that the only difference I can think of is that to get into prison you have to commit a crime, but they put you in school just because of your age. In other respects, school and prison are the same. In both places you are stripped of your freedom and dignity. We tiptoe around this truth, that school is a prison, because telling the truth makes us all seem mean. How could all these nice people be sending their children to prison for a good share of the first 18 years of their lives?